Welcome. Have you ever felt, well, just completely stuck in a major life transition? You know that really disorienting feeling? That space between who you used to be and who you're supposed to become next? It's like you're standing on a bridge. You can see the old shore behind you, but the new one, it isn't even in sight yet. Today, we're going to explore this exact state, and more importantly, a beautiful divine guide for navigating it with real serenity and faith. Okay, so here's how we're going to journey through this together. First, we're going to unpack what this idea of a spiritual Barzakh actually is. Then, with the deepest respect, we'll look at the most perfect guiding example we have. From there, we'll dive into a 6-step roadmap to finding peace. And finally, we'll bring it all together and see how we can use this to cross our own personal bridges. So first things first, what exactly are we talking about here? There's a powerful name for this experience, one that really helps us get a handle on this very human and deeply spiritual struggle. The word Barzakh literally translates to a barrier or an interval. And spiritually, you can think of it as that necessary and often pretty uncomfortable bridge between two states of being. Think about any huge life change, a new career, grieving a loss, or even a sudden spiritual awakening. For that new self to be born, a part of our old self with all its familiar habits and beliefs has to fade away. Barzakh is that space in between. And yeah, it can feel like a total void, but it's actually a sacred space full of potential, where a kind of spiritual death has to happen before a spiritual rebirth can begin. And being in this state, wow, it can feel incredibly tough. That feeling of identity loss is so real. It's like all the things that used to define you just don't fit anymore, and you're left feeling completely adrift. And that, of course, can lead to this deep existential anxiety and a real fear of what's coming next. This uncertainty can be so overwhelming that it just leads to paralysis, where you literally feel stuck. You can't move forward, but you can't go back either. You might even start questioning your whole purpose, and maybe the most painful symptom of all, start thinking that you've been completely abandoned. So what's really happening inside us during this time is this huge internal tug of war. On one side, you've got the ego. That's the voice of your past self, and it is desperately trying to pull you back to what's familiar and safe. It uses fear and hopelessness as its main tools because it hates change. But then on the other side, you have your spirit, your higher self, and it's calling you forward toward a new, more authentic, more fulfilling purpose. And that's the real challenge of Barzakh. Learning to resist the ego's pull and taking that little step of faith toward the spirit's call. Now, let's turn to the most profound example we have of navigating this exact state. We turn, with so much love and respect, to the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who not only went through this, but was also gifted the perfect divine guidance to see him through it. A few years into his mission, there was a period known as the cessation of wahi, which means a pause in divine revelation. Now, for the Prophet, peace be upon him, revelation wasn't just getting information, it was his lifeline. It was his direct connection to the divine, his comfort, his strength, his guide. So when it stopped, it created this profound and heavy silence, a kind of spiritual vacuum that was an immense trial and a source of incredible vulnerability for him. During this heavy time, he experienced a deep sadness and a restless longing. And this internal trial was only made harder by the pressures from the outside. People started to mock him, saying cruel things like his Lord had abandoned him. So you have this combination of internal silence and external ridicule, which created this profound spiritual distress that weighed on him so heavily. And it's right here, in this state of prophetic Barzakh, that Allah the Most Merciful reveals a timeless cure, a guide not just for his beloved prophet, but truly for every single one of us facing our own bridge. And this brings us right to the heart of what we're talking about today. The beautiful, compassionate, and incredibly powerful guidance that was revealed in Surah al-Dhuha. It's like a step-by-step map for crossing the bridge of Barzakh, a map that was tried and tested by the best of all creation, peace and blessings be upon him. The surah begins with a divine oath. Now, whenever Allah the Most High swears by something He created, it immediately tells us to pay close attention. He draws our focus to two opposite but equally vital states of being, the brilliant light of the morning and the deep, profound stillness of the night. This isn't just beautiful language, it's the foundation of the very first step. This opening taught the Prophet, peace be upon him, a fundamental truth to soothe his heart. That night of no revelation, it must have felt endless. But this verse was a divine promise that the morning of guidance was guaranteed to return.
It helped frame his trial not as an abandonment, but as a natural, temporary part of a divine cycle. And for us, when we're in the darkness of our own barzakh, our fear makes it feel permanent. This first step teaches us to zoom out. It asks us to accept that our struggle is a necessary night that has to be followed by day. And just knowing that, seeing that bigger picture, helps reduce the panic and allows us to find some peace right in the middle of the pattern.
So after establishing that universal law of balance, the guidance becomes intensely personal. This next verse speaks directly to the deepest fear we can have in our hearts, with a loving and absolutely definitive reassurance. And right here, this is the cure for the greatest pain of Barzakh, that gut-wrenching feeling of being abandoned. For the prophet, peace be upon him, this verse was a direct answer to the painful mockery he was facing. It was a deeply personal comfort from his Lord. And for us, this is a universal promise that we can hold on to in our own darkest moments. The silence we feel is never, ever absence. This verse gives us immediate internal security. It's a reminder that even when we feel totally lost or distant, Allah's presence is a constant, unwavering reality. He has not left us. Okay, so with that fear of abandonment now addressed, the next verses shift our focus. They move our gaze from the immediate pain of what we're going through right now to the profound hope of what's to come, offering a promise of ultimate fulfillment. This is the guidance that gives us the strength to just keep going. For the prophet, peace be upon him, it was a divine promise that the outcome of his mission and his own reward would be so much greater than the immense struggles he was facing at that moment. It gave him that long-term vision to endure the short-term pain. And for us, standing in the middle of our own bridge, we can't see the other side. This verse is our guarantee that the destination is worth the journey. The new, stronger person that is being forged through all this difficulty will be better. Holding on to this promise, it fuels our journey and gives us the strength to keep walking, one step at a time. Now, the guidance takes a turn. It shifts from promising the future to proving from the past. Allah, the Most Kind, asks the prophet, peace be upon him, and through him, all of us, to simply look back and remember his own life story. Allah gently reminds his beloved messenger of his own life. He was an orphan who was given shelter. He was searching for truth and was then given guidance. He was in need and was then made self-sufficient. This personal history was direct evidence of Allah's constant, unwavering care. For us, this is such a powerful and practical exercise. When we are lost in the fog of our barzakh, we are being instructed to anchor ourselves by recalling our own past. Think about it. Remember the anxieties that eventually were resolved, the challenges you somehow overcame, the unexpected help you received out of nowhere. This isn't just about feeling nostalgic, it's about collecting data, building a solid case file of divine mercy in our own lives. And that evidence builds a real, solid foundation of faith for the future. From this deep, inward reflection on all the blessings we've received, the guidance then shows us exactly how to turn that gratitude into powerful outward action. You see, action is the key to breaking out of that paralysis that defines barzakh. And notice the beautiful parallel here. Just as you were an orphan and were given refuge, don't oppress the orphan. Just as you were seeking and were guided, don't turn away someone who asks you for help. This is the perfect antidote to being trapped in our own heads. For the prophet, peace be upon him, this connected his personal trial to his universal mission of mercy. And for us, serving others shifts our focus outward. It gives us a sense of purpose when we feel lost, and it helps us break free from that self-absorbed anxiety. It's how we start to reflect the divine compassion we've received in our own lives. And finally, the surah concludes with this beautiful and empowering instruction. It's a final step that kind of seals all the previous guidance deep within our hearts. And this brings us to the final, consolidating step, to actively speak of the blessings of your Lord. Now, this isn't about boasting or showing off. It's about cultivating a deep, internal mindset of abundance. For the prophet, peace be upon him, the greatest favor was the message itself, and he was commanded to proclaim it. For us, to report a favor means to consciously acknowledge it, to share our gratitude, and to see the world through a lens of blessing, not of scarcity. This practice literally rewires our thinking. It fights back against the fear that's so central to barzakh, and it builds this profound inner stability that's rooted in recognizing the constant, ever-present reality of divine favor. So, with this incredibly beautiful and complete roadmap from Surah Dhuha, we can now see the two very clear paths that lie before us whenever we find ourselves standing in the middle of our own spiritual barzakh. And this really lays out the fundamental choice that we all have to make. We can fall back, we can let the fear and the ego win, and we can interpret the darkness as abandonment and just retreat to that old, unfulfilling version of ourselves. And if we do that, the transformation collapses. Or we can choose to cross over. We can use this divine guidance to see the darkness as temporary, to trust that we are never abandoned, and to turn our struggle into a meaningful journey. And when we do that, a new, stronger, more resilient self emerges on the other side, ready for a renewed purpose. In the end, the spiritual barzakh isn't a punishment, and it's not a trap. It is a sacred, necessary space for our own growth. It's a divine invitation to transform. And the most beautiful part of all of this is that Allah, the most loving guide, has already given us the map. We are never, ever asked to cross these bridges all alone. The choice of how to walk the path, with this guidance in our hands, is ours.